Okay. Good evening, audience. Welcome to my inaugural Tuesday Talks with Dr. V. I cannot begin to tell you how excited I am to be here. I cannot tell you how honored I am that you would stop in the middle of your day and check in with me just to see what is this woman talking about and what is this whole surrender or explode movement all about. But most of all, I am so honored that God has trusted me with this assignment for a time such as this. And I'm glad that you're going to be on the journey with me because I can't do it alone. It's impossible for me to pick up this assignment and carry it through to the finish line without help from game changers just like you. And I'm going to talk more about game changers in our next session, our next Tuesday talk. But tonight, I want to give you the foundation of where this movement started and how I ended up in this place at this time, at this season. And this is where it started. Ironically, it started in my house with my own children. I didn't know it was starting then, but it really was. And in the middle of raising 3 children, each of whom went through their own adolescence, each of whom had their own journey, each of them had their own explosions, I began to put the pieces together and realize if I didn't learn some things quick, I was going to explode as I watched my own children explode. So if I tell the truth, and anyone who knows me knows that I always tell the truth, I am transparent to a fault. In the middle of one of those near explosions as the parent, I asked God in frustration, what is this all about, God? Why are their father and I going through all of this? And in God's very subtle yet very definitive way, he said, these are the chapters of your next book. Whoa. Whoa. Any parents can relate to that. Please say amen. Raise your hand. Hit me in the chat. Because if you tell the truth, you've been exactly where I was. And I had 3 adolescents to go through. I had 3 sets, not 3 explosions, 3 sets of explosions to experience. Because like so many of us, and notice I said of us, we kick and scream, and we would rather explode than surrender. So the title of the book just poses a choice: surrender and play the game of life God's way, or explode on your way to wherever you end up going. And as I said to you, that experience were the chapters of my book. Let me share some of those chapters with you, because I want you to understand I'm serious. I'm telling the truth, the whole truth. So here's one chapter. One chapter is, have you ever argued with the GPS? All right, drivers, raise your hands, raise your hands. How many times have we been going someplace and the GPS said XYZ and we wanted to do ABC? Well, guess what? The youth and the young adults in our lives are doing likewise. Now, let me digress for just a moment, because I keep saying youth and young adults, and let me tell you why. The book is written for high schoolers and 18 to 23, 4, 5-year-olds. It's not really written for junior high and younger youth, but it can be adapted for any age. But I want you to understand, part of the reason that I keep emphasizing this group is because the book, Surrender or Explode, Learning to Play the Game of Life, is written for that audience. But it's written for all of us who ever were adolescents, and we had to make the choice over and over and over again, whether we were going to surrender or explode. And at the end of the day, when I have brave adults who will tell the truth, we all went through the phases where we had to make a decision whether we were going to surrender or explode. So let me get back on track now. So I'm a mom. I'm raising these 3 kids. They all went through adolescence their own way at their own stage. And in the moment of frustration, God said, chapters for my next book. And out of that, he showed me how I could draw a parallel between video games and life. And when my kids were in that adolescent stage, so much of what they were going through often involved them playing video games. And sometimes they were very successful and they climbed to the top of the leaderboard, but other times they were exploding and getting trapped and getting blown up and getting taken captive because they wouldn't surrender to the authority who actually created the game. So out of my own parenting, out of my own experience with my children, I had to learn some lessons, because if I didn't, I would explode in front of their very eyes and I would not be able to help them not explode. So that is part of what I was trying to do as a parent long before this book ever became an assignment from God. Now, that's phase 1. But phase 2 actually began before phase 1 because I was a psychologist a minute or 2 before I ever became a parent. I actually had my first child shortly after I completed my PhD. And out of my PhD experience, I worked in the office. And if I tell you, I've heard more exploding stories than you can ever imagine, you would, crack up. Because the reality is that so many people are exploding, and it's not a function of age. Actually, exploding doesn't discriminate. Anybody at any age can be exploding for any number of reasons. And oftentimes we adults try to pretend and try to fake out young people that we've always had it all together and we keep it all together all the time. And the reality is, when we tell the truth, we know that's not true. So exploding doesn't discriminate. That's point number 1. And point number 2, exploding can happen at any age. So as a psychologist, I was living this every day, going to my office, see clients, exploding, under the radar, out loud, all kinds of ways people explode. And that's point number 3. There are lots of different ways that people explode. And sometimes people explode when they're trying to keep from exploding. And those are the people who become addicts sometimes. And those are the people who find themselves taking on behavioral patterns that try to distract them or allow them to escape those details of their lives that are really causing them to explode. But then there are people who are just exploding out loud and noisy. And they're the ones who are violent and aggressive, and they're beating up people and they're abusive. And those are the ones who are beating themselves up, even to the point where they kill themselves. Or those are the ones who are, involved in sexual promiscuity and they are, molesting individuals and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't know who's in my audience right now, and I don't know who will listen to this down the road, but I know that there are many of you who are living what I'm talking about or have just come out of a situation similar to what I'm talking about. But at the end of the day, don't get it twisted that exploding takes on many forms and fashions and faces. And sometimes we recognize it and it's in our face and affecting us. And other times we're either ignoring it or it's being hidden very well. So that's the psychology piece of it. But let me digress again, because I don't want you to get it twisted. I want you to recognize that I know surrender or explode, learning to play the game of life God's way, is not for everyone. I know that. And I want you to understand that I don't expect everyone to agree or accept the premise, the ideas, the concepts that I am offering in this book. I don't expect it. But I do want you to understand that this book is written under the direction of the sovereign God Almighty, and I am speaking his words as they appear in the Holy Bible, because his truth is absolute according to my beliefs. But I don't expect everyone to believe what I believe, and I don't expect that I am going to convert thousands of people to believe what I believe. I am just offering my perspective on playing the game of life God's way, so that he is glorified and honored by the words that are in this book. So I want to make that perfectly clear. And I say that almost to myself to some degree, because there was a time when I was uncomfortable thinking that people wouldn't all rally behind this book and be excited to join the Surrender or Explode movement and be a part of the team, until I was able to recognize that, nope, it's not going to be that way. And as long as I stand on the truth from God's perspective as written in the Bible, then I'm comfortable, and I will let others choose to surrender or explode according to their own beliefs. So that's another point that I want to emphasize. And then if I go back to the journey, I was in the office, and I said I've been practicing longer than I've been a mother, actually. And at the end of the day, I heard God loud and clear. It kind of reminded me of when Jesus said, Lazarus, come out of the tomb. And I heard God to some degree just like that. And he said, Verdi, come out of the office. And he said to me, because so many of the people that I want you to touch will never make it to your sofa. And I want them to be able to have access to you. So you've got to come out and go to them. So I came out of the office, and I've been out of the office. And this actual joining this platform, bringing my message to this YouTube platform is important. And let me digress again, because I don't want you to forget that, if you're not a subscriber, subscribe to my channel, subscribe to my website. If you are already a subscriber, I thank you and I appreciate you. And I want you to be a part of the journey every step of the way. But it's important that you keep up so that you can know what we're doing. And at the end of this conversation, I want to tell you how you can fit in, because it's important that you find your niche, because you are a game changer. And if I give you the simple definition of game changers is someone who wants to make a difference abruptly, suddenly, change their trajectory. You don't want to wait for others to do. You don't want to wait for it to happen. You are one of the ones who make things happen. And that has nothing to do with a title. That has nothing to do with a status in life. That's simply about a mindset and an objective. And you want to be one of those people who makes a difference. So God said, Verdi, come out of the office. And I said, okay, now what? And step by step, my team and I have been creating what that outside of the office journey looks like. And this is a part of it. And you are a part of the inaugural Tuesday Talks with Dr. V that will be coming on a weekly basis. Now, that's sort of the foundation. Let me see if I forgot anything. No, that's sort of the foundation. So I'm going to pause, and I'm going to see if there's any questions that pop up in the chat that anyone would like to ask me about what I've said so far, or any question that's looming in your mind that you want me to address at this part of our discussion, our conversation. Any questions? Anybody want to ask me anything? See some some activity in the chat. Any questions? Let me see if there's something I need to read. Okay, no questions at this time. Okay, good. So let me tell you a secondary motivation behind the movement, behind the vision, behind the methodology. I'm sick of the headlines. I've heard enough horrible, devastating, traumatic, tragic headlines to last me a lifetime. And if you are an adult or a young person who either loves youth and young adults, or you're living that life, you ought to be sick of them too. I can't tell you how many times I've said enough is enough. And every time I get to one of those stories that I think it can't get any worse, I can't hear anything else, here comes another one. And you know, they're all tragic in their own ways. I don't want to grade tragedies. They're all tragic, especially if you're one of the people who loves the person who is exploding or has exploded permanently. And part of that was the article that I read, the Yahoo headline that said the young high school athlete headed to college on a scholarship was caught up in a sextortion scheme by people in another country who said to him, if you don't send us X amount of dollars, we're going to share the pictures that you thought you were sharing with a little girl with who knows who. And the kid couldn't handle the stress, the embarrassment, the humiliation, and he killed himself. Now that's tragic enough. That's tragic enough. And again, I don't know who I'm talking to in this audience, but if you've ever lost anyone to suicide, you know that pain is probably one of the most unbearable pains you will ever experience. But in addition to that level of devastation, as a psychologist, as a parent, I was doubly devastated because that young man didn't believe he could go to his parents and acknowledge the mistake he made and count on them to help him work through it and come out on the other side. And my brain can't hardly fathom that. But I would be naive if I said, I haven't heard stories like that before, because I have. I've heard young people say things to me that they wouldn't dare say to their parents because of the fear of the parents' reaction, i.e. explosion, when they shared what they shared. And so at the end of the day, that's a double tragedy. That's a double devastating situation because the young man is gone and he didn't feel that his parents were there for him or would be there for him because they didn't give him a chance. In all honesty, he didn't give him a chance to be there for him, but something made him believe they wouldn't. And he decided his best option was to take his own life. And I'm sick of that. I don't want to hear, I don't want to read, I don't want to hear any more headlines like that. Enough is enough. So God gave me a vision. God, and if I tell the whole truth, I think God really wrote the book and I just dictated. I just wrote really fast to get it all down. But God gave me the assignment. He gave me the words. He gave me the vision. He gave me the method. He gave me the team. He's laid it all out. And the vision is that our young adults and youth will be taught by adults how to play the game of life God's way so that they surrender to the Almighty God and learn the lessons. So as I said, like in a video game, they level up and they don't explode and they hang out on the leaderboard. And what I know and other adults know is that you run this race. It's a marathon. You don't get to the leaderboard and just stay there. Sometimes you lose points. Sometimes you fall in a trap. Sometimes you bump into brick roads. Sometimes you're taken captive, but you keep running because it's a marathon. And when you run a marathon, you know that You don't stop till you get to the finish line. So the vision is that adults and young people will come together and learn to play the lessons of life God's way. And the beauty is that as the adults teach effectively, and that's another topic down the road, we'll talk about effective teaching. As the adults teach, they will be reminded of what it was like to be in the shoes of the young people that they are now teaching. And they will be able to re-experience some of their own challenges and help the young people recognize you're not alone. You're not in this by yourself. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt, rang the bell, because that is what we so often as adults hide and pretend that we have it together and we've always had it together. And we don't give our young people the permission and the safety to be able to walk up to us and share some of the most humiliating, embarrassing, and frightening and difficult challenges that they face. So at the end of the day, that's the vision. Now, what's the method? The method runs counter to a lot of what we see in our culture today. The method is less is more. I don't want to reach 5,000 youth in an event at one time, and they're all loud and noisy and excited. No, this is not a book to just be given to a young person and let them go and read it and tell you what they thought about it. This is not a book to be shared superficially without going deep experientially. This is a book to be studied page by page, chapter by chapter, level by level, to understand how it applies to you, how it applies to them. Let me go back to my chapters. I told you about, have you ever argued with the GPS? How about a chapter that says, parenting is not for wimps or bullies. Wimps need to toughen up and bullies need to chill. And that's directly at the parents. How about this chapter title? Parents must look in the mirror. Because that very young person you're raising, you have your handprints on them. And you have to be able to understand, how did I contribute to what I'm seeing? And not necessarily in a bad way, but sometimes in an accountable way. And parents, adults, whether they're the teacher or the coach or the pastor or the whomever, they've got to look at what they have printed on the young people or not printed on the young people of the lives they could have, because there are adults who should have put their handprints on youth and young adults, and they didn't, because they weren't there, and they needed to have been there so that that young person would have felt who they were and how they could have made a difference. And so when we look at the method, I want to bring intergenerational conversations to the forefront so that we're talking to each other, learning from each other, and teaching each other. That's the best kept secret of the work that I've done with youth and young adults. Man, if I tell you how much they've taught me, if I tell you how much I've learned from just listening, and I love to say to the young person that I'm speaking with, that didn't come out of me. That came out of you. You said that. You have that wisdom. And all I did was give you the opportunity to discuss it and to look at it. But that came out of your mouth. And that just tickles my soul, because I know there's more wisdom in our youth and our young adults than we often give them credit for. So that's the method. And then the ultimate outcome is just to see a drastic reduction in the amount of exploding. I don't care what it looks like that's taking place, because too many, can I say too many of our youth and young adults are still exploding in their own ways, and enough is enough. So what that looks like, I like to say, one size doesn't fit all. It won't look the same for every youth or every church or every parent or every teacher or every organization. It won't look the same because the youth that you are serving, loving, teaching, training are all very different. And so the permission and the freedom that I give you is to look at what will work for you where you are with the youth that you touch. And I don't want you to do it the way I would do it. And I don't want you to think you have to fit into this little box. And I don't want you to think there's a script that you follow it every time. No, because this is a study that could be studied in 5 weeks. This is a study that could be studied in an entire semester. This is a study that could be done with one adult, 5 to 10, 12 youth, or this could be a study that is done with 100 youth with 10 or 15 adult leaders. How you set it up is dependent upon where you are and what fits your need. One size does not fit all, but don't forget, this is not a book just to buy 100 copies and pass out 100 copies and say, yay, we did something. Go read the book and tell us what you think. No, this is a book to be studied in-depthly with adult supervision, facilitation, teaching, whatever you want to call it, so that the young people are able to dialogue and analyze and figure things out for themselves. And I'm warning you, get ready to be blown away because they're going to blow you away. So I'm going to pause again because I'm giving you a lot of information and I'm moving fast, but I want you to have an opportunity to hit me in the chat if you have a question, if there's a comment, questions or comments that you want to make as I begin to wind down this first session. And each week, I will give you a topic for the session so you'll know what I'll be talking about each week. So when you go on to look, you'll see what the topic is for that session. And even if you miss it and you go back and look. But remember what I said. If you're a subscriber to my website and my YouTube channel, great. If you follow me on Instagram, great. But don't be left out. Don't miss out on the information. Okay, so no questions? All right, then. So let me begin to wrap up. This is not just a local movement. This is not just for the family, the community, the church, even the city of Houston. I want this message to be broadcast, shared, how do I want to say, heralded, any and everywhere that we are seeing young people explode and the adults who love them explode as well. Because sometimes, can I share a secret? Sometimes our young people are exploding because they are living with adults who are exploding. And the adults won't admit it. And the youth dare not acknowledge it. But some of our youth are exploding because of the adults in their lives or the adults who aren't in their lives. So this is a movement that I really want to eventually be global, because everywhere we turn, we see young people struggling. What do you do? Where do you go with this? Well, when you subscribe to either the website surrenderexplode.com or the YouTube channel, you will continue to learn what is going on in the movement. I want you to figure out where you fit in. And fitting in, like how do we do it, is not one size fits all. But I want you to think about, where could I support the movement? Where could I fit in? You can, if you hit me on my website, I will respond to you. If you have questions, if you didn't want to ask anything publicly, but you want to ask me a question through the website, hit me. Let's talk. But you can support us on so many levels. I want adults to lead studies. I want adults to sign up. We had a Super Sunday last year, and adults signed up to lead young adults through the study. Sign up in your neighborhood, in your home, in your church. There are some adults who want to make financial contributions. There are some adults who have churches where they want to host events. There are some adults who want to be trained to be teachers. That's why I said we're going to talk about effective teaching. Some adults want to teach, but they don't feel like they know how. And there are some adults who are teaching who could do a better, more effective job. So I'm offering lots of opportunities to fit into the movement. If you're a young person, pull the coattails of the adults pull your parents' coattails, tell them, I want to be a part of that. How could we bring that to our church? So there are lots of ways to get involved. And again, one size doesn't fit all. So you want to determine where you want to start, and then you want to hit me on one of my platforms, and let's get the ball rolling. So as I close, thank you for your interest. Thank you for your commitment. Thank you for your love. I cannot do this alone. I need everyone who has the commitment to join me. Don't hesitate to reach out to me, and please, please, please share this with other people that you know who are game changers, want to make a difference, and who just don't know where to start. Again, I thank you for your time tonight. I am so honored that you would give me this opportunity to speak to you about my vision and the movement. And I remind you, subscribe, 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 so you won't miss any of the details. So same time next week, 7 p.m. Central Time, Verdi Leatherman YouTube channel. I'll tell you next week, we're going to begin to talk more about surrendering or exploding, because that's the foundation. So I really want to make sure that's crystal clear, and then we'll move from there. So thank you very much. Have a great evening. I will talk with you next week.